Welcome to episode 76.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
Ready to take a vacay, but you just don't have the time to plan? Let the agents at 3D Travel Company pamper you and take care of all the little details. Find us at www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips, booked and traveled by 2017. Hurry and book today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know we have launched a Patreon page. You can find us at www.patreon.com/whodidthatvoice. What is Patreon, you say? Well, it's a lot like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign that allows you to help support us on a monthly basis. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show and earn amazing perks. Help us out today and join the Who Did That Voice family in a new way. Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest and I will be speaking about a character she has been voicing for the last 30 years. You may know him as Bart Simpson.
Ay, caramba! I liked it when it was me, Mom, and Homer. You wrecked everything. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Bart! What did you say? Bart? Suffer and succotash! You can talk!
Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today on the show, I am so pleased to be bringing you Nancy Cartwright. Nancy, thank you for joining me.
You bet. You're welcome, Trenton.
Well, Nancy, the very first thing we always like to do when we have a special guest on the show is just to get to know them a little bit on a personal level. So tell me about little Nancy and how did she grow up into the woman she is today and the actress that she is and especially a voice actress?
Well, let's see. I was number 4 of 6 children, born to Frank and Miriam Cartwright in Kettering, Ohio, which is just south of Dayton. So I'm from the Midwest myself,
right.
Like you. And my upbringing was, it was upper middle class neighborhood, pretty white bread, not a whole lot of diversity.
Yeah.
If there was something other than white bread, it was seen as different. So I was not introduced to any other cultures much, or not a whole lot of diversity in religions either. However, what I did get was amazing opportunities through the school system to grab onto the things that really interested me. We had great sports programs. We had music programs. We had art programs. And as you know, there are a lot of communities today. Most of these funds have been taken away in most of our schools throughout the country, which is sad because it's through the arts that kids can really excel and prove themselves, their value, and kind of make a difference on the planet.
I agree.
So that was, thanks. So, that was one thing, is that the community and the schools provided that, but also my parents supported each one of us kids in making our dreams come true. And some of us, as we grew older and became adults and stuff, sometimes as we split off into our own various separate directions, because we kind of all moved out of Ohio, we all found our pockets of whatever, communities and things that we created for ourselves. And some of us excelled and more than others,
Absolutely.
And it's been interesting. But for me, I embraced all the opportunities I could, being on the gymnastics team and playing the trumpet since age 10, and switching over to French horn because I felt the competition with the trumpet was a bit much, and French horn I always thought was a beautiful instrument.
Oh,
but
it's lovely. Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I love the French horn, but played like a baritone, a baby baritone in the marching band, and did marching band, and but especially did theater and did speech.
Oh, wow.
Mostly my attention and my happiness was derived a lot from speech competitions, because not only did it teach me self-confidence in getting up in front of people and just speaking, which anybody could have. Every student should do public speaking classes, because again, as you grow older and you have children yourself, you want to have that skill to be able to be a leader at the PTA, or at the, a volunteer in your community, or to speak to a small group of parents or whatever,
Yeah.
But again, it gave me that. But as a really little kid, I realized when I was actually fairly young that I like to make people laugh. And I would do sound effects and tell silly jokes that I thought were really funny. And when I tell them, people definitely would laugh. I remember as young as 7 years old making people laugh. And then a few years after that, there were shows on television that I really liked, and one of them was Laugh-In.
Okay.
And Ruth Buzzy played this character of this old lady. Gladys Ormsby was her name, and my brother Steve and I used to dress up like he was the dirty old man, playing opposite of Ruth Buzzy's little old lady, and I could kind of do her voice, and we just did it for family and relatives and stuff. But it created that idea of they would laugh at what we were doing, and who doesn't love that? It's like people it not laughing at me, but just enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
That's always fun.
So that was great, and I just continued to seek other opportunities for myself, that I just did things that I loved, which had a lot to do with acting and jumping around and gymnastics and backbends and flips and playing musical instruments and bringing home trophies for first place in humorous interpretation. That was my playing field for doing voiceovers. The judges would say things like, you've got an unusual voice, you should do cartoons for a living. And that planted the seed there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Nancy, tell me a little bit, how did you get involved with Dawes Butler?
Dawes Butler, well, when I first got his name, I had just graduated from high school, and I was working at a radio station that was right behind myself. It was WING, which makes sense because of the Wright brothers in Winging It in Dayton. But I got a little part-time job. It was full-time for the summer, but it was just summer. So I filled in for people that went on vacation.
Okay.
And I was just doing all kinds of. I eventually learned to do every department. I learned about every department in the radio station, from reception to trafficking, which is scheduling of the commercial spots, to working on the air with the primetime disc jockey, who I had a total crush on, and he was, he was way old enough to be my dad, but I was this kind of schoolgirl and just had such a crush on him. He's no longer around, and if he would be so flattered, I think, to hear that. I mean, this young girl woman, I was pretty naive, but innocent,
Yeah.
And I just really, he so supported my dreams and really encouraged me to go off to California.
That's awesome.
But some woman came into WING radio, and she was promoting music, like Warner Brothers music. And Warner Brothers to me meant Mel Blanc and, Daffy Duck and Tweety Bird and all those wonderful characters that I grew up with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was incredible. Yeah. Her name was Ann Schwiebel. And she gave me her business card, and I told her what I was interested in doing, and that I would that I'd love to do that for a living. And she said, "Well, I work for Warner Brothers, but if you put a little tape together and give me a sample of the voices that you do, I can maybe get it to some people, and I can hook you up with the right people." I'm like, okay. So that's what I did, and she kept her word, and she sent me back a letter, and I still have it. It's part of it's in my archival collection of keepsakes, but this letter from this woman, and just a simple agreement that she made with me. And in the letter, she had Disney Studios, she had Hanna-Barbera, she had Film Nation, Film something. I don't think they're around anymore. Another animated studio, and Daws Butler's name. And she says he does voices like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. And I'm like, wait a minute. Roadrunner doesn't, and Wile E. Coyote, they don't talk. He holds up a sign and Roadrunner, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like it doesn't work. And I didn't know what that meant. And I found out that he was the voice of Huckleberry Hound, but that's all I knew. And there was his phone number, so I called him up. And when I rang the number, an answering machine picked up. Not a service, but an actual machine.
Yeah.
And he had this outgoing message of a British butler named Percival Pickles. And just leave your name after the beep. Wait for the beep, beep. And I went, hello, Mr. Butler. This is Nancy Cartwright from Dayton, Ohio. And I left this Cockney response, and it
That's
was
awesome.
very, very spontaneous and no thinking aloud, but it was pure, it was just a very clean communication. And sure enough, he called me back, and that's what started our relationship. He would send me scripts in the mail that he wrote, and then I would record it on a little cassette from a little mini cassette, portable cassette player, and mail it back to him, and he would verbally give me he would tape a critique for me on another cassette and mail that back to me along with another script. And he kind of took me under his wing, and here he was in Beverly Hills, and I'm in Kettering, Ohio.
Oh, wow. That is so special.
Very special.
Well, and for those who don't know Daws Butler, beyond Huckleberry Hound, he was also Elroy Jetson, Yogi Bear, Mr. Magoo, and so many more.
That's right.
Well, that is so fantastic. I'm so glad you were able to dive into that for us, Nancy, because I know he was such a big part of the foundation of your career, and that is so special that we got to kind of hear some of that today, and how your beginnings kind of in schooling and everything got you to where you are today.
Well, thank you so much. I do have to give credit to the late, great Daws Butler, and I still am in touch with his son, Charles, and his widow, Myrtis Butler, who's 100 years old now, and bless her heart, and she's facile and lovely, and, just quite amazing, and his house is still there, and I go back, and when I visit, I go back and take a little tour in the back where I used to show up on Sundays for a lesson.
Oh, wow.
And it was supposed to be for 1 hour, but I stayed for about 4 or 5, and then he and his wife would drive me home and take me to a barbecue. It's called Love's Pit Barbecue, and we would, they'd treat me to dinner, which, I'm a starving student, trying to make a few bucks working at the cafeteria or something. And they take me out to dinner and then drop me off back at the dorm. Just kind of became a surrogate father figure to me, because I was so far away home from my own home,
Oh, wow. That is so special. That really is.
Yeah.
Well, getting back into the voiceover aspect of your career, I believe you played a character named Gloria Glad on Richie Rich, and that was your first voiceover job. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct.
Awesome.
That's the first time I got paid to do it. I'd been doing it before for the radio station, doing a little character named Lily Pad, and Lily Pad was the very first predecessor, I guess I'd call it, to Bart Simpson.
Okay.
A similar kind of girl, a voice, but a very different kind of a character. And then Lily Pad kind of evolved too. And again, it was Daws. He had taken me, and it took a while though. It took a year and a half or so before I actually, he wanted to work with me a bit more and get an arsenal, that's what you would call it, an arsenal of characters together that I could do a number of different sounds. And because I'd been doing competitive speaking in high school and at Ohio University for a number of years, that's how I actually learned how to do voices, was by competing on the speech team and telling stories. No one actually taught me how to do voices. It's something that I developed on my own. And it worked because I would bring home first place in humorous interpretation or dramatic duo or whatever it was,
Well, that is so fantastic. Kind of going back to something you initially said when we started, Nancy, regarding schools taking the funding away from programs like the arts. I really do
Yeah.
hate that because I grew up in the theater as well. I did all the shows and the musicals. I was always the secondary lead comedy relief kind of character, like Nicely Johnson and those kind of characters.
Oh, I
Marce-
played Adelaide.
Oh, wonderful. Music Man and Guys and Dolls. Those were like my favorite. I played Marcellus Washburn and The Music Man. And, it just those wonderful musicals. I love to sing. I love to act. And it's really sad that they are pulling funding for those kind of things. And even other school programs are suffering too now. It's almost like the kids don't have a ton of extra anything to do anymore, which is really sad.
I know. You almost feel like it's like this. It's like it's programmed that way to keep the kids dumb and keep them stupid and not creating and just like turn everybody into robots. I find it seriously abhorrent.
Yeah. Well, they took like home ec out. And I was like thinking, even in school, when I went to school, they didn't have home ec. And I'm thinking, why didn't they teach us how to clean and cook? And there's different things that, I would have loved to learn in school that sometimes I learn in life. And I'm going, why didn't I learn this 10 years ago in school? That would have really helped.
I know, right? It's so true.
So.
It's kind of like the basics of living. That's not, you're not taught that.
No.
And sometimes, this day and age, lots of parents, they're working some 2 and 3 jobs each in order to just
put food
pay
on the
for the
table.
rent and pay for the kids to be able to go to school, put clothes on their back and food in their mouth. It's like it's the quality of life today is way it's much more challenging today than it was when I was a kid. And I have a feeling I may be a few years older than you are, but when I was a kid, it was like that wasn't the concern. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. But
Mine
by
too.
the time I was she was, but by the time I was in about 7th grade or so, she needed to. She actually ended up taking a job.
Yeah.
Even back then, that was probably in the early 70s.
Well, I know times have changed, and that's for sure. But, kind of diving back into your voiceover career, some of the other wonderful things you've been a part of, Nancy, that were super epic for me when I was discovering more that you've done besides Bart Simpson, were characters on My Little Pony. You played Gusty and Baby Heart. And Baby Heartthrob, you played Baby Cuddler, you played Posy, and so many other ponies. And I love My Little Pony. My good friend Katie Lee has been on that series, and she was my very first guest on the show. So My Little Pony has always been an extra special show for me as a kid. So
that's super great. Yeah, we were the very first cast of My Little Ponies, and that was so much fun. It was a wonderful cast of people. Yeah, it was. I think it was E.G. in that, but Katie Lee for sure, and I think Casusi was on it, and then I think Charlie Adler joined us, and
he did.
He
played
right.
the little dragon.
And,
he played the little dragon.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And Ginny,
Ginny
Little
McSwain.
Pony, Ginny McSwain was the casting director for that, and we're still very much in touch with each other too. And those are kind of for me the good old days of when we were creating a whole new golden age of animation, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It was evolving, coming out of a superhero in the 70s kind of animation. It was evolving into Saturday morning syndicated, and it was very commercial, though. The things like My Little Pony and
Glow Friends.
Yeah, and they had toys, products that came out of that, and we got to do, but for us, it was fantastic because we got to not only do the voices for them, but also we got to do the singing sessions and got paid for doing the singing sessions. So there was a nice cadre of us that got to get paid really, really well for doing what we loved. And it was such a unique group that this was our purpose. It's not like most actors that come to Los Angeles that want to do film and television. All I wanted to do was voiceovers. And because I was so laser sharp in my goals, is that, of course, I'm going to get what I want because that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah. And you had the determination and the gumption to go for it and do whatever it took.
Yeah. And I also had the integrity to say, that's not my part. I don't want to do that one. But you know who you should get for that? You should get, Tress MacNeille should do that because I don't do that.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah, well, when you're honest like that, that's another kind of thing that I learned along the way. Instead of thinking of it as competition, people remember that.
Yeah.
They remember that you are, she talked herself right out of a job. She could have been, but I just know that I would not have been happy, doing something that I really wasn't right for, especially when I know somebody else that's in their wheelhouse. They can sleep with that voice and put that voice on and talk to themselves in their sleep like that. For me, it's like it doesn't come so naturally. It's not quite in my range,
Well, and that's one thing I love about the voiceover community is that everybody is so helpful to one another and so friendly, and it's just been unrealistically pleasant to deal with everyone in the voiceover community. So,
wow, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Well, some of the other amazing shows you've been a part of are Galaxy High School, The Snorks, which I absolutely love that theme song. You were on Aladdin as the Sprites, which those were super cute. And you did Goof Troop as Pistol Pete, Pete's little daughter. And you were also on Kim Possible as Rufus, which I was like, what? That is so cool.
Rufus the Naked Mole. How did you go? Booyah!
Yeah, it's like when you hear that, you're like, she was the mole rat? Like, did it even talk? It's one of those, like, Perry the Platypus kind of things, where it's just them making noises. It's not really a talking role, but it's still very iconic and just wonderful to hear that you were a part of that, especially a character like Mindy from the Animaniacs, who was super cute.
Oh, yeah. I love her.
I love you, lady. Bye-bye.
Super cute. I was only in about 1/5 of the number that they ended up doing. I think I only did I didn't do a whole lot of them, but it was really great fun. But back to Rufus the Naked Mole Rat. I didn't even know what a naked mole rat was. I had to look it up. There actually are these little critters that live in Africa, and they're like underground, and there's a whole intricate, like, kind of like a system of living not unlike ants, where there's all these tunnels.
Oh, wow.
And they build these tunnels to stay out of the sun, and they're really disgusting looking. They look like overcooked hot dogs, and they're kind of gross. And anyway, I don't know. I went in, and I also got to do a separate record, which although it's fun to do it with the other actors, it's faster if you get a record by yourself, so that you can then finish your record and then go on and actually do another job that day. And if the job takes the whole day to do, or like 4 hours or whatever, it's sometimes not as easy to book two jobs in one day. So that was really great that I got to do separate records. That was great fun.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear that it was a lot of fun. Well, Nancy, the thing that we really pulled you in for today was to talk about Bart Simpson from The Simpsons. I know it started initially as 48 one-minute shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show, and then in 1987, and then in 1989, season 1 officially launched. What has it been like to play a little boy for 30 years, in essence, overall?
Oh, it's amazing. It's a dream come true. It's just like, who wouldn't want to have job security?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's like it's the most incredible thing I think an artist could ever want.
Oh yeah.
And the freedom that it gives me to be able to create and do other things, because it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but that might rub the studio executive the wrong way when I say that. Because I say, yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but the value of what it is that we do for that show contributes so much to that show's success, and I had no idea at the very beginning. Nobody had any idea that, 30 years later that I would be doing this podcast with you, saying, yeah, we're still doing it. We're moving into season, we're finishing up season 29,
wow.
And we're going to be moving into season 30.
Wow.
That's like, what if somebody told me, if I had a crystal ball reader and looking at it, she goes, you're going to be cast as a 10-year-old boy, and you're going to be doing it for 38 years or for 45 years. You're going to be doing it into your 90s. You're going to be almost 100 years old, still doing the voice of this character, and people will know you and still tune in and listen, and you will make them laugh. I would be like, what? Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's a household name. It's a household name. It's become, everyone knows it. Whether they know the show or not, they know the name,
Yeah, pretty much. I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right. And I'm telling you, I know for myself that it was what I set out to do. And it's not, it isn't what, I know Dan, Julie, Yardley, Hank, Harry, they were not originally voiceover actors. Dan and Julie, of course, were on the Tracy Ullman show, so it would make sense to say, could you be the dad and could you be the mom? And, of course, they'd say yes, because Jim Brooks was their boss and hired them to do that show. And it seemed like a fun, quirky thing, and of course they're going to say yes. It was another opportunity for them to do something different, too, but to also say thank you to Jim for casting them in that incredible show.
Yeah.
The other guys, Hank didn't join us for, I don't think until about season 2, and I think Harry was brought in because Jim knew of his work, and he was funny and had a reputation for being very funny. So they needed that, but they wanted, as far as the kids go, they needed to open up the casting for that. And not only did, as you probably know, I was called originally to audition for the voice of Lisa.
Yeah.
Years later, I found out that Yardley was called in to audition for the voice of Bart.
That's funny.
And isn't that wild? And
Yeah.
both of us told Matt, no, separate auditions. I didn't meet Yardley until we actually went that first day, but at my audition, I said, no, I can't, it's not me. I can't do the girl, but I can do the boy. I want to do the kid. Can I do the kid? And Matt, of course, said, yeah, sure. And he pretty much hired me on the spot. And then I came to find that Yardley had done the same thing. I can't imagine Yardley doing the voice of a boy.
Yeah.
She's got the quintessential girl voice. She's so perfectly, it's just the placement, her pitch, but even though Yardley sounds an awful lot like Lisa Simpson, she makes her very much an 8-year-old girl. Precocious, no doubt about it. She knows everything.
Yeah.
But that voice, I can't do it. In fact, my pipes, and when you earlier were going through the characters that I do, with the exception, there's a handful of girls that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, you did mention Gloria, you did mention a bunch of girls that I did, but mostly my career has been boy voices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bart, Nelson, Ralph, Kearney, Todd, Database, Ralph,
Nelson.
Nelson Muntz, yeah, and Chucky from the Rugrats, and
Which is
was
fantastic.
on Popeye and Son, and
So, Nancy, over the last 30 years of voicing Bart, how close have you really gotten to this character in voicing him for such a long period of time?
oh, I love him. I think he's adorable. It just makes me. I love the table reads. I think they're so fun, and when he does not hold back. Bart will just say exactly how he feels, and he doesn't care if he hurts people's feelings, and he doesn't care if he offends people. He comes out and does it, and he oftentimes has to pay the consequences for it, But it's sort of like, I think everybody has well, there's no doubt. Everybody's got some Bart Simpson in them.
Yeah.
That's what we're striving to handle, I think, living on planet Earth. It's like, how do I stop being so
Yeah.
much like Bart Simpson?
Yeah.
It's that bad boy quality that we have that tends to get us into trouble. I have a son. I raised a son, and I got to raise a daughter, too. And having kids and being one of 6 kids in my family, it's, the Simpson family is a tight family. And Bart's not going to be able to get away with a whole lot, but it sure is a lot of fun playing him.
Well, it is so fantastic to talk with you about it. Dan and Julie and Yardley and Nancy and Hank and everyone you work with on The Simpsons and have worked with over the last 30 years. It's just so amazing. I mean, your cast of people are just so epic, and everybody knows them now because they've been so well known over the years, and it's so wonderful to see how everyone's careers have developed and grown and blossomed. And it's so wonderful to get to talk with you about Bart Simpson, as The Simpsons has really become an American staple.
I agree.
Well, something I wanted to talk about regarding Bart was, I know back in 1992, you were a Primetime Emmy Award winner for Bart with an Outstanding Voiceover Performance Award, and you have been nominated again this year, 2017, again for
Right.
Bart Simpson with the Outstanding Voiceover Performance Award nominee, which I'm super excited for, and I definitely hope you win because I definitely think you deserve it.
Well, thank you. But you know what? I want to clarify something, though, because back in 1992, it was Dan, Julie, Yardley, and myself, and Marsha Wallace and Jackie Mason, because Marsha and Jackie were guest stars on The Simpsons. So the 6 of us were actually given Emmys. We were not nominated. It wasn't presented to the Academy. What it was the first time that the Academy realized that there was this very special show and there was no category for it. So they came up with a board of governors. They call it a juried award. And they, for the next, I don't know how many, till 2009, I guess, they could give out either 1 or up to 6 Emmys, or none. Give 0 or up to 6 Emmys to an ensemble or individuals who they felt warranted that kind of an acknowledgement. And so we set the precedent. And I was so flattered by that. And it was finally in 2009 that there were enough shows then to warrant an actual category with the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. But prior to 2009, there weren't enough shows in prime time to have a category. Isn't that wild?
That is really wild, absolutely.
So Dan Castellaneta actually was the first one to get nominated and then win it in 2009. And then I think he got maybe a couple more times, and Hank then got it 3 times or whatever. But yeah, this year, 2017, is actually the first time that I've ever been nominated for the Primetime Emmy.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really like, wow. I didn't even realize that it was that long. It's kind of like, okay, I submitted the show that I wanted. You know, there's a time frame of the shows that air. It's like that one season.
Yeah.
And I'd look at it, and then I would call my friends, some of the writers that I'm really friends with, and say, "What do you think? Which one do you suggest?" And they would give me their suggestions. And then I would kind of look at it myself, and I would pull out my script because I keep all my scripts. I've got over 600 of these things in these binders. Oh, my God, there's a whole room of Simpsons scripts. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
One day I'll have to have them leather-bound or something.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I pull out the scripts, and I look at them, and I start reading them and remembering them and looking at them, pulling them up on the Internet and going, this is the one. Before I look at it, though, I read it and just see which one has Bart, Nelson, Ralph, has the most characters in it. And I felt that was a good meter for me to look at. And I didn't pick the one that was suggested, but I picked the one that actually got chosen. So that felt pretty good.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I win.
Wow.
I already won. I got nominated.
Yeah, I know. That is so fantastic, and I am so excited for you, Nancy. That is a super epic achievement, and I definitely hope you win this year.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I just have a couple of questions, and we'll wrap this up. What kind of advice would you have to someone who might look at getting into this crazy world of voiceover?
Well, I would give some advice that probably is not the kind of advice that you would normally get from someone, which is like, get an agent and put a tape together, because you have to do all those basics. And there's plenty of books out there that they can read. There are a lot of really good books there's a plethora of books that have all the basic elements that you need to put a tape together and that. But for me, it's more about kind of like you need a space at your house where it's your space and it's where you do your work.
Yeah.
A clean desk. You need a good microphone. You need a program like Audacity or some kind of a program on your computer that you can record, because they're out there and it's so simple.
Yeah. And
you can use a closet. You put a proper light in there, or you go down to the basement where it's nice and quiet and you make it quiet. You don't have to go to a great extreme in order to make yourself a little studio, but make a space for yourself. It's yours. That's one thing they could do. The other thing is, you gotta really want it. You gotta really love it, because if you don't really love it, I got news for you. It ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
You really gotta have a passion for it, because there are plenty of people that have a lot of passion, and they're good. And if you don't have the passion, they're gonna just leave you in the dust, man. Because the guy that shows up early and leaves late, that's the guy that's gonna get the job. So that may not make sense to you, like in terms of a voiceover job, because you can show up early, but like in theater, you show up early, you get into the space, you don't arrive late, you be a professional. That's another clue is be a professional. Do your homework. Your characters all have to be individuated. They're all separate individuals, like your family members or like your friends. They've all got their own personalities and their own quirks. So when you're doing a number of characters, you got to make them very, very specific, and that's through an evolution that I learned by doing.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. It's for me. Eventually having to put together a tape of my voices so I could remember who's who. Kind of common sense things like that will help you. Surround yourself with people that love and support who you are and what you're doing. That's really important, by the way.
I agree.
That's really important, because if you've got somebody back there saying, I don't know, you want to be an artist, you're going to do that, I don't know if you can make a living doing that, that little voice that they're planting inside of your head, who needs the negativity? It's hard enough. The competition is hard enough. You don't need... Grandma Jones telling you, you need something to fall back on, or your dad or your mom not really supporting your dreams. You're going to find out. It's life. Go out, have fun. Just knock it out of the ballpark. Do the best that you can. You're going to find out soon enough if you're competitive.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Nancy. Well, I do want to give a special mention to Gary Imhoff, who mentioned you and kind of got us connected for today as well. It was super special of him to help kind of reach out for us to get connected.
Yeah, great guy. Super great guy. We met so long ago. So long ago. He supported my fledgling career back in the early 80s and encouraged me on some scene work, and we worked together on quite a few scenes in my acting class, and started getting my acting chops together and realized that I had this ability to do these certain things. And Gary became such a good friend of mine and supported me in many ways. Just a sweetheart.
Absolutely. He is a really great guy. Well, I wanted to talk about your new film that is coming out. It's going to be coming out in 1 week, as today is September 8th. It is called In Search of Fellini, and I cannot thank you guys enough for allowing me to preview this film to kind of get an idea of what we were expecting in the coming days in the next week. But it's such a wonderful movie. It's about a girl that pretty much lives in a dream, and she finds out that life and reality are kind of crazy and scary and unpredictable, but it also shows that life can be beautiful and kind and exhilarating and magical. And it's a wonderful film, and I am so excited to talk with you about it today. You're the screenplay writer. You are also a producer, and you actually play in the movie as well as Cosima. Tell us a little bit about the film.
Wow, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes, this it's very much autobiographical, the story, because when I moved to California to make my dream come true, a lot of things had happened, and I'd reached a point. I was doing lots of animation, doing some Saturday morning, like you had mentioned, My Little Pony, Glow Friends, Snorks, Pound Puppies, a lot of Saturday morning fare, but I wasn't super fulfilled. It's funny, I was happy, but I felt like there was, I should say this, I was making good money, but I felt like something was missing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, my acting teacher had me take a look at one of Federico Fellini's Oscar-winning films called La Strada.
Oh, yeah. And
starring Giulietta Messina and Anthony Quinn and Richard Basehart. And I must have cast every guy in the I'm not sure if Gary, this may be the one thing that Gary did not do with me, because I did other scenes without him, but I cast different actors, young actors, to play opposite me, but I must have played every part in that movie. And I was searching for some fulfillment, and I realized, wow, maybe I could get the rights to develop this as a stage production. How am I going to do that? Wow, I don't know. I guess maybe I need to meet Fellini. And I had this wild idea of going to Italy and meeting him, and he would fall in love with me and cast me in his movies, and he would say, oh, sure, you can do that as a play. No problem. And it was very naive. But the thing is, nobody said no. And nobody said, you can't do that, and that's ridiculous. You're never going to get. I just didn't let anything stop me. I just packed a bag, and I ended up finding out where his office was. But what I wanted to do, I knew, I wrote letters. I wrote letters to Carlo Ponti and Dino De Laurentiis, who were the producers, and did not hear back from them. And I wrote about one letter to Fellini's office. I heard nothing back. Another letter, another letter, another letter. Finally, I got a response, but it wasn't good. It was horrible. It was like, don't come. He's going to be here between Christmas and New Year's. He's working. He's going to be editing, but don't come. He doesn't have time to meet with you. Sorry. And I'm like, whoa, I'm going. He's going to be there. Are you crazy? I'm out of here. So now this was in 85. This was before I was cast as Bart. So I packed my bag and I went off on this journey, and I decided to take in some of the culture of Italy, and I went to Milan, Verona, Venice, Florence, ended up Christmas Eve at the Vatican, and for the next 5 days, was trying to meet up with Fellini. I had quite the amazing adventure, and you will see that in the film. A lot of the things that happened to me, I was proposed to. I made some stupid decisions, really stupid decisions, got myself into some very kind of dangerous situations, very Fellini-esque, by the way.
Yeah.
So by the time I got back to L.A., I realized that my story of my journey was way more interesting than me doing a remake of the brilliant thing that Fellini had already done. So I started to develop it as a one-woman show. So then a couple years later, I was cast as Bart, and at the same time I got married, and I got pregnant on my honeymoon. So this is a whole different thing. And this idea of the one-woman show was a little bit put on the back burner. And until my kids were a little bit older, it was about 1995, that's when I developed it as a one-woman show. And by then I'd met this guy named Peter Chenis, who co-wrote it with me. We developed it as the screenplay that you'll see in about a week or so.
Yeah.
But you'll only see it if you come to Los Angeles or if you go to New York, because it's a very limited release.
Yeah.
And it will roll out, with each week it will roll out into your smaller, independent theaters, in Los Angeles, a Laemmle, or what other theaters? There's one on Sunset and Crescent Heights or something. But it's the independent film houses, not your big major chains, because it's an indie film.
Well, I hope it gets picked up by the bigger chains. I thought it was an exhilarating film. It caught me off guard. It caught me by surprise. The film has these moments of fast-paced, slow-down romance, scary parts where you're like, oh no, the girl is in danger, and you think, and you're not sure what's going on. And it's just so riveting and so exciting, and it's so different. And it is Fellini-esque. And I didn't realize the story was a parallel in essence of your life, and that makes it even more exhilarating to know. So wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go. That little piece of art that she finds at the very end, that really happened. And
oh wow.
A guy that spoke only Italian, he actually did propose to me. That really happened.
Oh wow.
And I got my life threatened, and I did something really stupid, and that really happened. And situation with my mother, I don't want to spoil everything. I don't want to do a spoiler here, but when your public watches it, they'll see that what that relationship really was true.
Wow.
It was true. The time sequence, it was changed, but
yeah.
I don't want to spoil it too much, but it was really just magical. Who wouldn't want to do their first film production in Italy? It was so great for the crew.
Yeah.
And Taron Lexton, the director, just knocked it out of the ballpark. And David Campbell, who has helped some 450 artists. He's gotten numerous Grammys and stuff. He was the composer and arranger for all the music. He did that himself. It's just extraordinary. In other words, instead of paying, to use Caruso's voice from a 1906, song that he did, we hired somebody that's a young guy that has a tenor voice who sounds like Caruso, and it just extraordinarily fun and life-changing creativity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You guys have to see this movie. In kind of closing with talking about In Search of Fellini, I just want to say You have to watch the movie and look for the part where there are 3 cappuccinos. It's super special, as well as the part where they say, "You are my Fellini." Oh my gosh, guys. This movie is so unexpected and so riveting and exciting. And it's just so, it takes you through all the it takes you through all of your emotions and highs and lows and happies and sads and excitement and exhilaration. And it's just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much. How about that line? Sometimes you have to travel far, far away in order to find what is closest to you.
I love that one too. That was a really good line. There were so many good lines, but those were a couple of my favorite that I mentioned. But in closing, Nancy, I just have one final question for you, and the question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Of all the great works, I think that I feel that I have done in terms of, like, if you want to call it success, especially with The Simpsons and some of my artistic work, I think, honestly, I want my legacy to be that I helped, that I cared, and that that if I can help give a leg up to somebody, and if through my own work that I can inspire others, that's what I would love to be noted for, is that I like to help people.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful legacy, Nancy. Well, Nancy, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today. I really cannot thank you enough for being on Who Did That Voice. Would you please give us a closeout today as Bart Simpson?
Yeah, sure, I could do that.
Yes, you've been listening to Trenton Larkin, and it has been my pleasure listening to Who Did That Voice, by the way.
That's my line. Who did that voice?
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. A question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the Episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Friday for our next special guest, Victoria Atkin, the voice of Evie Fry from Assassin's Creed Syndicate. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.